Hello and welcome to another episode of Pause for Payments. I am Kristy Duncan and I am absolutely delighted to be here with Gonca Latif-Schmitt, who is Managing Director for Global Commercial Card Business and Head of Treasury and Trade Solutions at Citi, based in New York. Welcome, Gonca.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am delighted. So today we're going to talk about the changing landscape in B2B payments and how fintechs are changing the market, especially when it comes to the customer experience. So just to set the stage, Gonca, can you tell the audience a little bit about your role at Citi?
Sure. So I'm responsible for the commercial cards business globally for Citi within our treasury and transaction services. And I've been with Citi for 27 years, grown up in this organization, and have been in this current role for about 5 years, and really just responsible for the overall business, where we issue in over 66 local currency countries. So quite a global job.
Global, no kidding. 66 countries and 60 currencies, or I probably got that wrong, but that is a lot any way you look at it. And it leads me to another question. So you've got this fantastic global role in the card space. What trends are you seeing in these card payments, Gonca?
So in commercial cards, the biggest trend we're seeing is really the move to B2B. And it certainly accelerated quite a bit post-COVID. So many of our peer institutions and our clients really saw a huge drop in travel card activity just as the pandemic started. So it was really an imperative and a big focus of all organizations to move more to B2B. And that move has been really focused around how do we use cards for not just travel flows, but really all types of payments, including accounts payable or even embedding cards within operating flows. So that's really the biggest trend in our industry in commercial cards.
Fantastic. And certainly the pandemic has had a huge influence on that. It'll be really interesting to see where we are a year or two out from here.
Absolutely.
So this is fantastic. And we know that we're going to be finding this new normal, kind of feeling our way into the next few months. Can you talk a little bit about this whole concept of the consumerization of this B2B experience? What is that all about?
Absolutely. So, if you go back, for those of you that have been in the payments industry for a long time, most of our thinking around this over the decades has been, if you answer the question, who is the customer? It's typically the organization. So someone would answer, Shell is our client, or the government is our client, or a financial institution is our client. And really, it's not until you step back and think about who is the user of our digital tools for any product, and certainly in the payment space. And you start to realize there's actually a human being behind that keyboard or that mouse. And it's an individual that uses the tools. And so this naturally came about across the commercial cards industry because we're one of the few payment products where there is actually an individual. That individual may not be buying the service, but they're using it. They're carrying that card in their wallet. They're on travel. They need to interact both from a service perspective and an ongoing, digital footprint perspective. So many commercial cards issuers started to think about the consumer cardholder as a customer. And so when that shift started happening, you started to see more card issuers starting to invest in the digital tools. But naturally, it's not just limited to commercial cards. There's always a consumer of the digital assets, no matter what payment product. And so as that shift started to happen, many banks, including Citi, started saying, well, hold on, let's look at the whole digital experience and determine what is it that we need to do to create the same user experience that an individual has when they interact in their consumer life. And why do we not afford them the same experience? And that really has been a shift that's been going on now for quite a long time. But if you tie back to its origination, it actually did originate with products like cards that are naturally consumer oriented, but in the wholesale payment space.
I love it. That whole concept of B to H, or business to
Yep,
human.
that's right. That's right. I love that. That's right. We're all human.
Yes, exactly. And
Who would have
why
thunk?
just, well, exactly. And why does that consumer cardholder
Right.
get all of the attention on the UX
Right.
side and the business, user not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, what we started to do is really challenge a really basic premise we had, which is, in the consumer cards business, we have so much talent in market research, in UX design. And so about 2, 3 years ago, the light bulb went off for us, and we said, well, hold on, our friends right next door kind of do this for a living. So here's a brilliant idea. Why don't we just go over to our global consumer bank colleagues and say, could you help us? And open arms immediately. And in fact, once their UX team dug their fingernails, so to speak, into our tools, they got really excited at the prospect that it was actually such similarities between a consumer experience. So even something as simple as activating a card, our
Mhm.
UX design and the experience on our mobile device is the same as it is in the consumer cards business. So why wouldn't
Fantastic.
it be? Right? You as a consumer, it doesn't matter whether you activate your personal card or your corporate card. Why would you have any different experience? So we're really not professing to be the experts in consumerization or consumer UX experience. We're just partnering with the experts in our organization to deliver for our wholesale payment clients.
That's fantastic. So it's like this huge opportunity to upgrade the user
Right.
experience on the business side versus the consumer side. So why do you think there has been this lag in this UX and the pace of digital transformation between consumer and commercial sides of the business?
I think many organizations historically have lived in those silos, right? I mean, why would any organization have individual UX teams across businesses?
Mm.
But many organizations do. Um, so I think it's just a matter of large organizations, especially, are challenged with figuring out how can pan horizontal skill sets be leveraged across lots of different businesses, as opposed to creating these kind of niche teams that don't really learn from each other. And that's really the mold we broke, which when I describe it, it sounds like, well, isn't that obvious? Why wouldn't that have been done earlier? But it was just a matter of, did the various groups have the remit to partner across silos? And the timing was great for us because it happened to have been right off the back of, support from our most senior leadership to act as one city.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And it's when you look back, it's sometimes hard to believe that. I know I used to work at a big bank too, and we were very siloed, and it's hard to
Right,
believe that the thinking was so siloed. How
right,
couldn't they think about collaborating across the silos?
right, right. And we certainly have a long way to go. I mean, every organization, including our own, is just starting this journey. But just the idea of breaking those norms about why not work across silos. So in the end, right, the customer wins. So everyone wins ultimately when
Yeah,
we do that.
yeah, fantastic. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about fintechs, because
Okay,
fintechs are so hot these days, and we see them
absolutely.
disrupting the payment space in so many ways, and bringing increased competition. Can you talk to us about why you think that is, and do you think that the incumbents, I mean, Citi is an incumbent, there's obviously lots of them out there, do you think the incumbents need to up their game, or is there another way that we can move forward from here?
I think you've probably heard in many different forums that notion initially that fintechs thought, okay, we're going to come in and steal the customers away from the established organizations. And very quickly, I think fintechs were often led by really smart people, realized very quickly that it does take a long time to build a client base. And so I think fintechs have been really smart about viewing large organizations as distribution channels, right? So we'll develop a product, we'll be very nimble with that development, and then we'll partner with institutions to get access to the clients. So in our minds, that's really synergistic and it makes a whole lot of sense. You do begin, though, to say to yourself, well, why can't large organizations innovate as well? And the reality is, it goes back to scope or broad scope versus narrow focus. When you're playing in many different fields across many geographies, you often don't have the ability to narrowly focus on one line of business or one problem. You should be able to. There's no reason why you can't, but we're not yet at that place, I think, in large organizations to figure out how to be nimble. So, I often will be part of fintech conversations and I'll privately have a talk in my head and I'll think, we could have done that. Or I knew that that problem existed. But the reality is we didn't, because we were occupied with other challenges, oftentimes regulatory challenges, infrastructure, mandatory work that has to happen. So I think as fintechs evolved and started looking to partner with us, for myself, I started changing my mindset to say, rather than getting hung up on what we could have done and why partner with them, I just view all the fintechs we talk to as an extension of our innovation. And if they can figure out a better mousetrap, then why not partner? The only thing we have to be careful of is that we don't become a dumb partner, right? Like a dumb partner, meaning all the intellectual capital exists with the fintech and you're simply just acting as a balance sheet, because that's not a sustainable model for any partner on both sides. And so I think that's the way we're trying to think about is, what is our value? What makes our side of the partnership sustainable for us? What do we uniquely bring? And we have to ask the question of fintechs, are they sustainable, right? Can they grow with us in long term? Because once we introduce them to clients, it's really Citi's reputation. We sort of act as like the prime, to use government lingo, a prime, and they're really kind of like our subcontractor. And so that takes a huge amount of responsibility to make sure we introduce the right partnerships.
Absolutely. But then the magic can happen once you find
That's
that
right.
great partnership.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the fintechs bring the innovation and the banks bring the
Right.
reputation and the clients and the regulatory side.
Right.
So together
Right.
it can all be magic.
Right. But you have to be thoughtful about what those partnerships are, because some have been successful, but others, you have to make sure that it's the right sustainable model that makes sense for both organizations, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you're creating some offshoot of some technology on the side and it's not truly integrated into your tech stack or your model. And that's sometimes that tempering that has to happen, because there's a lot of fintechs and there are many individuals that have great ideas, but sometimes just sifting through to find the right partner can be more than a full-time job.
Indeed. Well, welcome to this brave new world.
That's right. Well said.
Fintech bank partnerships or potential partnerships.
Exactly.
Gonca, this has been a really fabulous discussion. And I could, of course, talk all day about fintech and banking, two of my favorite topics, certainly within the context of payments. And you've got this awesome role. But I sadly need to tie up this conversation. I have one last question for you, which is a question that I ask all of our guests here on Pause for Payments. And that is, if you were to give career advice to the rising stars in our audience, what would that be?
I would say to really be self-aware without giving yourself a hard time. Find allies and confidants that you can trust to build yourself up, and really take on new challenges. Stretch yourself even when there's doubt seeped somewhere into your head. I think all of us have some version of imposter syndrome. And I think as women, we tend to have a lot of imposter syndrome. So you've got to surround yourself with people that can balance your self awareness, but also lift you up, so that you don't let the imposter syndrome slow you down. That would be my advice.
I love that. And it's so true. I know I suffer from imposter syndrome. I've suffered by not finding allies when I needed them to help me kind of navigate
Right.
challenges in my career. And it can make such an incredible difference. And it's not changing you, it's just changing what's in your head sometimes.
That's exactly right. It's so sad. It's all in our heads. We just have to get out of our own way. So.
Well, thank you for that. It's been so insightful, and I love this discussion. I'm really keen on these fintech partnerships and not becoming a dumb partner, and just being thoughtful about how we approach them.
Absolutely.
I love your definition of the consumerization of the B2B experience, that business to human approach, which is so fantastic. Because you're right, it is humans who make the payments.
Exactly.
All right. This has been a fantastic discussion. Thanks so much for joining me today, Gonca.
Thank you so much, Kristy. I really appreciate it. It was a lovely conversation. Thanks again.
Well, it's been great. So thank you to Gonca today. Thank you to our audience for joining us for this fantastic discussion. And I encourage everybody in the audience to join us online for the many other Pause for Payments episodes, where we invite amazing women from around the world of payments to talk about some fantastic topics. So thanks, everybody.